Good morning, Professor Amanda. In the strategic influence classes, we learned very important six principles which can help us in personal development and indeed the professional handling. In that six, there are two principles which helped me very have a practical implementation in my life after January 19th. So, very first, I'll be speaking about the value framing as my major. Then I'll be speaking about reasoning as my secondary. So, in the value framing, how does we get the value to the on the table to the people who we are appealing to? I'll give you the first application, the example where I implemented this. The very first example which I could speak of is the team assignment for global operations, where the entire team was aligned towards selecting a supply chain company which was very generic, like Amazon, Walmart, Coca-Cola, Nike, which where the data was very much available and there was not much of work involved. Whereas my thought process was, why don't we select 3M Limited? 3M, the reason behind selecting the 3M was the higher the complexity available, whereas the learning curve is very high and it acts a positive impact for our careers and it will get a greater value in form of learning. For that, first I had to align with who I'm dealing with. In my team, fortunately, there were two people from the medical domain and two people who have previously worked in the global strategy. Considering all these backgrounds, I came up with a strategy how to have a positive influence, how to get the value framing to them. First, my strategy was the context framing. How the context framing I bought it was, rather than putting it as a difficulty doing the research, I said them this is advantageous. This will help us in the growth in as an individual level and even at the academic level. The first I consider added the 4 points. One is historical significance. That 3M was the first company to implement the lean manufacturing principles and the agile manufacturing principle. And the learning opportunity, the concepts which 3M uses like OTIF, which no other company around the globe uses. And the domain relevance, since 3M is one of the top manufacturing medical equipment manufacturing, like example, like they have the top stethoscope, the dental equipment, the sales, and how they procure. In spite they have 2,500 plus vendor around the globe and 15 plus production in the various countries around the globe. The data was limited, but it was not a blocker. It was an advantage so that we can get deep down in the research, learn the concepts, implement it in the practical way so that it gives a upper hand compared to any other teams which we are working with. By putting this, seeing that the significance, the impacts, the team was very much aligned. Then the team was unanimously agreed that yeah, here the learning opportunity is very good. The key outcome was, first thing, we got sent them on our assignment 100 on 100. Then we learned the most complex supply chain metrics, that is the OTIF, using a simpler case studies, how we mastered the supply chain, having 200 plus suppliers and having 15 plus production units, how they are managing the global supply chain was a very complex thing and which we learned in the very productive and implementive way. Here, I learned by framing the things, even the complexest things, if that get values to the people whom we are dealing with or the subset of teams which we are dealing with, that will get a huge impact and they agreed on it. What I could have did better, I was just thinking about the short-term goals, about the learning opportunities, about the grades, about how. But I could have mentioned my team that in the future, if you're getting up with a case study, because coming from an MBA, having a case study where we able to crack down the complexest supply chain like 3M, that would have added great asset in our resumes and even future interview discussions. This would have been I could have did better, I feel, in the frame of value framing to my team. And the next application was when I was providing an interview for a lead engineer in one of the company called as IP Syndrome. It's a startup. It happened on January 13th, where the initial kickoff call. It was a small point of friction that I come from a startup. They thought coming from India, I didn't had a global exposure because this company was dealing with the countries around the Europe, all the European countries were their uh, customers. So they had the confusion that a person coming from a small startup from India, he might lack global exposure and the impact. Now, my challenge was how to will I frame that, how I can add a positive impact and a value what I'm getting to the table. First, I had to come up with a strategy that how am I breaking that perception that I lack global exposure and the startup background and handling the large scale clients, which are usually government organizations, and handling in the same way. I framed myself into the 4 points. Startup agility, because working in a startup, it's not just only about doing the code, it's about owning the end to end ownership of the product. And they were looking on a specific domain called as EDD, which I had experience of 5 years, which I highlighted. And I leveraged the comparison that not only I was working in startup, I have worked with top clients, e-commerce clients like Nike, Alfutahem Groups, Essence, and so on. And I positioned myself that being a lead engineer, it's not only about the coding or having the technical expertise, it's about having a strategy of how to get things better and more impactful. I positioned myself pursuing my MBA plus technical depth will be a lead ideal position for a leadership role, which will be handling a lead engineer role. Based on that, the impact was the engagement shift. The founder was really appreciative that how I managed the skepticism in a different way, and the concerns were resolved, and I progressed successfully to the next rounds, and the discussions are going on in the final rounds. And what I could have did better here was informing the business metrics, the narrative of business metrics. What will I get to the table, the business outcomes if I come into the table? The business impact issues, the metrics which I could impact might be moving their business from 10% to automated to 20%, and the profits might go from around 1.2 million euros to might be 2 million euros in the upcoming quarters. This could I could have improve by saying how the numbers play comes into play while doing the same value frame. This was all about the value framing that helped me not only with doing my MBA and also in my interviews. Next, I'll be working on the reasoning. In the reasoning, since pursuing my MBA as a part-time consultant, I'm working with a company where I'm a technical lead. There was a challenge which happened in my company. The product was about to release on February 2nd, 2026, but all of a sudden, while we were testing, the product was having the data integrity issue. The Elasticsearch, the product which we selected, had a data corruption issue, which had a huge impact the data privacy, the data consistency issue. The challenge was to convince the product owner that we have to delay the launch and approve the fix, because of which it might impact the long-term relationships with the employees. The cost of, but the concerns to the product owner was the cost of delay and the long-term stability. If we have a short-term fix, what will be the impact in the long term? I come up with the reasoning for delay. First thing, the cost and security. Might be a small delay is not a not a technical failure, but a strategic advantage for a long-term planning. So I came up with a complete plan that what will be the cost, how soon we are going done, and what will be the future impact, and how it gets a positive impact to our company in front of clients. The cost and security, I came up with a open search mechanism where it was lower the cost but higher the stability. And I came up with a plan where in two sprints, that is within a 1 month of 28 days, teams proper teams were assigned a technical team and a business team and a DevOps team which handles a specific task. And the future, how the scalability might be, we are delaying by 1 month, but within the quarter 3, we will have the cost reduction, which is the most important thing, and our profits will go high. And the main thing, the reputation of the company, the data integrity issue, if we are handling the large set of data, the encrypted data related to health, which might come up if we are not fix this might have HIPAA compliance issue and EU compliance issue, which could have impacted. By saying what is the impact and how the plan was and what is the future results, the product owner completely agreed with it. I got a two sprints of approval. How could have I did? The product launch was done successfully on 28th of February after two sprints, and the data integrity issue was solved, and we had a good, I got a very good bonus also for this. And what I could have did better was getting the more numbers in the X format. Like as this impact, there can be 2 to 3x growth in the transaction volumes, and the revenue goals could have been impacted in a better way. How could it have impact the direct business growth might be for CEO and the CBO level people. So by this, I could learn how the value framing and the reasoning can impact the positive impact in our professional lives, which I could see in the practical way in my career, which was a great learning opportunity, which I shared with you today. Thank you, Dr. Amanda.